Good morning, West Georgia. It's time for the Dawg Report on WTRP's Morning Drive. Going to do something a little differently today. Normally about this time we catch you up on all the latest news surrounding Georgia football and some of the other sports going on in Athens. But today we're actually going to have an interview with one of the writers, one of the guys that covers Bulldog football for UGAsports.com, which is the Georgia division of Rivals.com. It's Radi Nabulsi. And Radi, football season right around the corner. The Dogs kick off, and how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. Can't wait for kickoff. Should say it's been a long off season, but it really feels like we haven't had football in 10 years. I know it's just 9 months, but it feels like it's been forever.
And the first question we have is the quarterback position. It was finally decided on Monday. Grayson Lambert is the guy. So looking back at all three of the guys that were candidates, Fatone Bauta, Bryce Ramsey, and Grayson Lambert, what was special about Grayson Lambert? What do you think got him the job? And also, where do you think we could see Bryce Ramsey and Fatone Bauta this season?
Well, I definitely think it's a situation where Bryce Ramsey and Fatone Bauta get to play. I mean, we know Mark Richt. I asked him specifically about does Grayson Lambert have a short hook? Because in Mark Richt's own words, he really didn't separate himself. He didn't really pull away from the other two that much. So, instinctively you would say, well, I guess you're going to yank him if he has any sorts of trouble whatsoever. And he said, no, that's not the case. It's a situation where I'm loath to pull a guy, as people have criticized about me. And, I'm not going to pull somebody just because they're struggling a little bit. But if we do bring in Fatone Bauta or Bryce Ramsey, it will be by design. And we've seen that in the past where Mark Richt says, okay, the first 3 or 4 series, my starting quarterback gets it. On that 5th series or 3rd series or whatever, we're bringing in the second guy. And he's done that in the past. He did it last year with Bryce Ramsey and Hudson Mason. So that's a situation where we could definitely see those guys get into play. But at the same time, if Grayson Lambert's your guy, you want to give him as many reps as possible. I mean, ULM, I'm not going to say it's a practice game, but it's not much more than that. And, let him get out there and get used to playing with the Georgia's receivers and running backs and offensive line. And, Brandon Cablano needs all the experience he can get. He's new to being a center. So the two of them getting their timing down and getting their protections called is going to be very important. But to your original question, what set Grayson Lambert apart is his mind. He's very, very bright. When he and Brian Schottenheimer were talking, I was told it sounded like two NFL offensive coordinators talking. He understands what Schottenheimer wants. And that's not to say that Bauta or Ramsey do not. It's just, he's a very high football IQ. He's very experienced. He's been in the fire for 2 years versus, just a few games for Ramsey and Bauta. So he has more experience. He has a little higher football IQ, and he and Schottenheimer click, if you will. So I think that gave him a slight edge. Not much, but enough to take the starting spot.
And one question that a lot of people have, fans and not fans alike, is the receiver depth. You have Malcolm Mitchell coming in, Isaiah McKenzie, who have some experience, but you look at the two deep, and there's 3 true freshmen, Michael Chigbu, Jason Stanley, and, of course, our hometown guy, Terry Godwin. So how often do you see those 3 freshmen getting the ball in the ULM game? And also, one guy that I really enjoyed watching last year was Jeb Blazevich. What do you see him doing in his sophomore campaign?
Well, Jeb Blazevich, he won the starting job 4 games into the season, so I definitely see him taking on it. He looks like he's 45 years old right now. He's the fresh-faced youth of last year. Jeb kind of wide-eyed, guys kind of looking around. That man is gone, and that young boy is gone, and in his place is a veteran NFL-looking guy. He's kind of scary looking. And Jeb's going to have a huge year. There's no doubt about it. And Brian Schottenheimer loves using tight ends. He likes to use 2 tight end sets, and Jay Rome's healthy. So I can never see those guys getting a lot. But to go back to your question, they're going to have to catch a lot of passes because, as you say, you got Malcolm Mitchell, and you can kind of stop right there. Yeah, Isaiah McKenzie caught a few passes. Reggie Davis has caught a few. Kenneth Williams caught 3 or 4 passes, and Kenneth Downs is a walk-on who's a big body. But I definitely see Terry Godwin getting returning punts, returning kicks, taking the jet sweep out of the backfield, catching passes, from that F receiver spot. Terry Godwin's going to be a superstar. There's no two ways about it. He's going to get the ball a lot, and the coaches don't want to give away anything, and they've actually told their players hey, if someone asks you about, who the freshman standing out or, just deflect that question. We don't need to hype up anybody. But even the coaches can't contain their excitement about Terry Godwin. And Jason Stanley, we've seen him running those jet sweeps as well. He's back from that ACL injury. There's reason Georgia went, hell-bent for leather to recruit him, and they got him. So Jason Stanley's going to be big. And we put this in at UGA Sports in our war room before anybody was talking about him. We said, learn the name Michael Chigbu. There's a reason that Tony Ball said, that's my guy, and went crazy trying to get him. And when he signed, when he committed to Georgia, Tony Ball was ecstatic. And then before he went to LSU. And Georgia has a big-bodied guy who reminds me a lot of Marlon Brown. So I can see Michael Chigbu, Terry Godwin, and Shakiri Wilson, another freshman. I expect him to get some playing time as well. So it's going to be a lot of young guys out there to complement Malcolm Mitchell and Isaiah McKenzie.
And we'll move things now over to the defensive side of the ball. And when I think of the UGA defense this year, I think of linebackers. You have Leonard Floyd, and then you have, another hometown kid, grew up right down the road, Jordan Jenkins from Harris County. Secondary looks to be a little young as well. So just what are your thoughts on the defense going into the season?
Well, to me, the biggest question as this year when it comes to defense is going to be, can they stop the run? They couldn't against Florida. They couldn't against Georgia Tech. That first series against Arkansas ran it down their throat. That's my biggest question about Georgia's defense. But they got big Trenton Thompson. He's Georgia's best defensive tackle by far, and he's only been on campus since June. That guy's, again, another superstar in the making. Chris Mays at the nose spot looks to be in the best health and best shape of his career. Then you got Sterling Bailey and John Atkins. John's probably going to be the starter, the opposite Trenton Thompson. So they got some beef up front. The guys look like they're in shape, much more so than last year. The secondary is going to take care of itself. I mean, they are young. There's no question about it. But that's the same guys that had a fantastic secondary last year. Granted, a lot of teams want to run on Georgia because they could. But, Aaron Davis comes back for year two. Dominic Sanders, that's a freshman, started all 13 games. Now he's a sophomore. Malcolm Parrish started last year, and he's in the rotation as well. But I can tell you this. There's two names you got to know. Rico McGraw, he's going to be a stud. I mean, he's going to blow people up. Juwan Briscoe, another freshman. Those guys are going to come on, and I expect them to have years like Dominic Sanders did last year. They're young, but they're talented. And one guy that no one's talking about is a gentleman by the name of Baker. He came in. No one's really talked about him. He's out of Florida. And this is a guy who can shut down anybody one-on-one. Now, he doesn't really know where he needs to be in the grand scheme on the defense, but I've been told that if Jeremy Pruitt says, hey, go shut down Malcolm Mitchell, one-on-one, Baker can shut down anybody, which is very impressive. So once they can get him to figure out what the rest of his role is and, how his spot interacts with the rest, Georgia's secondary is going to be fantastic. Linebacking core, probably one of the outside linebackers, probably the best in the nation. The real question is, what are they going to do with inside linebacker? And you can see they've moved Leonard Floyd to inside. It's kind of a new spot for him. He played a little bit last year, but he's going to be required to drop back into coverage a few times. And that Jake Gaines, 226 career tackles at UAB. He's actually, from all the guys coming back for Georgia, he transfer, he's got the most tackles of anybody. So he was out there directing Georgia's defense the other day. I know he wasn't listed as a starter, but I think he starts this year.
Radi Nabulsi from UGA Sports joining us on the morning drive. And finally, we'll have one last question for you. And we just want to get your overall thoughts on Louisiana at Monroe. On Wednesday, Jeremy Pruitt was asked about Louisiana Monroe, and he said that he's played ULM one time and he's 0-1. And, of course, that was his first year at Alabama back in 2007. And we go back to 2012, and I know 2012 Arkansas doesn't really jump off the page as one of the better Arkansas teams that they've had. But they were number 8 at the time when they went into War Memorial Stadium and lost to ULM in Little Rock. So just what are your thoughts on ULM this year, and also what do you think Georgia has to do in order to get out and win by at least, 21, 28 points?
Well, last year ULM with a pretty good quarterback only averaged 20 points a game. Against Georgia's defense, I don't see them putting up a lot of points. They're very good against the run. Everyone thinks Nick Chubb is going to break off 200 yards in the season opener. That's not going to happen. I would be surprised if he gets more than 13 carries simply because Sony Michel is very likely to have as good, if not a better year than Nick Chubb. So Sony Michel and Brendan Douglas and Keith Marshall, they all want the ball, and there's no reason to hand the ball to Nick Chubb, 30 times a game, especially in this one. But they're very stout against the run, so Georgia's going to have to go to the air a little bit. I think, and the ULM defense, the walk defense is pretty good. So I can definitely see a situation where Georgia, I won't say struggles on offense, but they're not going to come up and immediately put up 56 points in the first half or anything like that. They're going to have to work for it. That defense is not going to make it easy on them. But I really think Georgia's defense is going to shut down ULM. They're breaking in a new quarterback as well, and I just don't know that with that crazy wolf pack, as the Georgia's outside linebackers call themselves, the defensive front, trying to make a name for themselves after a couple embarrassments last year, that there's a whole lot that I don't see ULM putting up a lot of points. So I think Georgia handles ULM quite easily. Granted, I mean, they're no pushover. They're no the bright lights aren't going to scare them. They've been through the fire before. They know what they're in for. But I could definitely just see a situation where Georgia's just out recruited and has better talent on this side of the ball on both offense and defense. And I just don't think ULM's going to be able to hold up to Georgia.
Radi Nabulsi from UGAsports.com joining us on the morning drive today for the Dawg Report. And Radi, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to call in, talk about the Bulldogs, and thank you for taking time out of your day to talk with us. And we look forward to hearing more from you later on in the year.
I look forward to it myself. Thanks for having me.
Radi Nabulsi from UGAsports.com joining us on the morning drive. Stay tuned. We're going to give you a rundown of all the high school football games going on tonight in West Georgia, including a very big rivalry game going up in Franklin, the Pulpwood Classic between Callaway and Heard County. That's coming up tonight, as well as a ton of other games in West Georgia. So stay tuned. You're listening to AM620 WTRP.